Hi guys, I'm Mike and this is F1 Fanatics. So guys, it is Monday, so that means that it is driver ratings for you guys. We had that fantastic race at Monza yesterday, so what we're going to be doing in this video is I'm going to be going through 1 to 20 on the grid, giving them their driver ratings, and then I will give the racer rating as well. Guys, don't forget, if you are new around here, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification, and you can keep up to date with all our latest content. And if you haven't noticed already, in our kind of top right corner, we do have our Twitter handle, which you can follow us on as well. But guys, let's get into those driver ratings. Okay guys, so we are going to go literally from 1 to 20 through the grid. So I'm going to start off number 1 with the race winner, which is Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc, I am going to give a 9 out of 10. I thought it was an absolutely superb drive from the young driver. He did just defended so well in the race. He held onto that lead, had no support from Sebastian Vettel with that early spin out, and yeah, it was an absolutely superb drive to hold off both Mercedes. Obviously first off Hamilton keeping behind him, and then Valtteri Bottas later on. It wasn't perfect, there were some mistakes and there were some very hard, maybe on the line racing, but it was still an absolutely fantastic drive by Charles Leclerc, so he gets a 9 out of 10. Next up is Valtteri Bottas, who finished second in the race, and for me, I'm going to give Valtteri Bottas a 7 out of 10. It was a solid drive, it wasn't anything special. Obviously he's gone up from third to second with that Hamilton mistake late on in the race, but when it really counted, when he had his chance at the lead, he made the mistake. So for me, it is nothing more than a solid drive. So for Valtteri Bottas, I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10. Now on to Lewis Hamilton, guys, and he's also going to get a 7 out of 10 for this performance. The car was really good. It was faster than what we expected Mercedes to be at Monza. Spa was last week. At Monza. And you know, he was hounding down, he was on the medium tyres, which was the quicker compound. Yes, you could argue that those incidents made it a little bit more difficult for Lewis to get past, where obviously Charles was showing the black and white flag as a warning, but you know, he had the advantage. Both him and Bottas, you know, were absolutely going hell for leather at Leclerc, and they weren't able to get away past. So not sealing out a race win and obviously dropping from second to third, it is a 7 out of 10 for Lewis Hamilton for me. Coming in at fourth is Daniel Ricciardo, and I thought Daniel Ricciardo drove an absolutely superb race. This is by far Renault as a constructor and Ricciardo and Hülkenberg's best drives of this season so far, and with the amount of money they're pumping into that team, boy did they need this result. They've been quick all weekend, had a fantastic qualifying. Well, they had a fantastic qualifying, but it may have been better because of what Hülkenberg was doing, being reprimanded for that holding up they play along with Sainz and Stroll. So yeah, it was a little bit naughty from Hülkenberg there, but in the race I can't really fault the Renaults. I thought they're fantastic, and Daniel Ricciardo, I'm going to give him a 9 out of 10. Absolutely superb, solid drive, did what he needed to do, had about an 18-second gap over Hülkenberg I think in the end, and yeah, very convincing drive from Daniel Ricciardo. Moving on to Nico Hülkenberg, and like I said, there was that instant in qualifying where he was a little bit naughty and kind of ruined that kind of last battle for pole that we were all excited to see. And in the race, was slower than Daniel Ricciardo, still comfortably finished 5th. It was a very good drive, his best drive of the season so far, but not on a level of Daniel Ricciardo, so I'm going to give Nico Hülkenberg an 8 out of 10. Moving on to 6th place, and this was Alexander Albon, and I think Albon had a good drive, not as good a drive as what he had the previous week in Spa, but it was still a very solid drive, and he's managed to finish 6th, but he didn't really get anywhere close to those Renaults. And yeah, obviously he had the 5-second penalty as well with his it was an overtake. I think he forced someone off the track. Yeah, pause, had to think there, remember there, but yeah, 5-second penalty. It was a solid drive, but it wasn't an exceptional drive from Alex Albon, not as good as what he drove in Spa, so I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10 for today's performance. Coming in at 7 was Checo Perez, obviously starting from the back with power unit upgrades put onto his car and finishing 7th. A strong points finish, was a really good drive from Checo, really impressed with him today. The Racing Point have been good in the last 2 races. Obviously they do tend to favour low downforce tracks as they've shown in the past, but yeah, it was another strong performance, 2 weeks in a row, double points finishes back to back for Sergio Perez. So yeah, a very solid and a very good drive for him. I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10 for that performance. Moving on to 8th place, and that is Max Verstappen. Now Max Verstappen, I thought it was a good drive. Obviously you can say from starting from the back, well 19th, obviously Raikkonen started in the pits, getting forward to finishing 8th and in the points is a good race for him, but considering how well Max has been performing and how good the car now is at Red Bull, I think it was a good drive, but nothing exceptional. Obviously at the start he misjudged his braking distance and lost his front wing and had to pit in, and that affected the race as well. So you can say it was still good to get in the points after that, but that was his mistake. So I don't think it was any better than Albon's drive, so I'm going to go 7 out of 10 for Max Verstappen. 9th position then, in his home Grand Prix, was Antonio Giovinazzi, and this is his best drive to date, and I believe this is his highest finish and best point scoring position to date as well. And I was really impressed by Giovinazzi. It was unspectacular, but it was a pretty solid drive throughout. He avoided everything going on around him. He started 10th, finished 9th. So yeah, a very good drive for him, and it was a really positive step in the right direction for Giovinazzi. So for him, I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10 for that performance. 10th position, I'm going to go with Lando Norris. Now the McLarens had potential in that car and pace. Obviously Carlos Sainz had made it into Q3 and was running a good race before his retirement with the loose wheel nut. We'll come on to Carlos Sainz rating later on, but Lando Norris obviously started in, I believe it was P16, and making his way up to 10th in the points finish. Good for getting a points finish, but not necessarily one of his stronger drives. Lando Norris has so impressed us here all season, so I'm going to rate him a little bit harsher because he sets his bar a little bit higher. So for Lando Norris, I'm going to go for 7 out of 10. A solid drive, but nothing more than that, just getting into the points, which was good for him. Into 11th position, guys, and this was Pierre Gasly. Obviously his race was ruined a little bit from that incident where Vettel caused his spin out, obviously then colliding with Stroll, and then Stroll entering the track unsafely and forcing Gasly to go wide. Yeah, he was forced wide, wasn't great for his tyres obviously, but he never really recovered in there, finishing outside the points. I think, yeah, you can't say it wasn't his fault, the incident that happened, but it wasn't an exceptional drive. Kvyat was showing the pace that was in the Toro Rosso car and going well in the points finish earlier on. Obviously had started 13th as well. So yeah, for Gasly, I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10 for today's drive, well, yesterday's drive, guys. Now on to 12th, and a guy obviously that we've been critical of the challenge, but I actually think he's had a really good start to second half of the season, and he was robbed of his best drive of the season. This for me would have been better than Hockenheim, because again he qualified getting into Q3, so really fantastic for him. Then had a positive start, gaining 2 places, was driving in 7th before Vettel re-entered that track unsafely and made contact with Lance Stroll, spinning him out, and then obviously him getting a penalty for his subsequent unsafe entry back onto the track that affected Pierre Gasly. So for Lance Stroll, I'm going to give a 7 out of 10. His race was kind of ruined by that incident, and I'm not going to knock him necessarily for what happened after that. He is an inexperienced driver. We have been harsh on him in the past, but I thought it was a pretty solid drive for Lance, and he's unlucky because I think he would have had a strong points finish if he hadn't been involved in that incident with Vettel. 13th now, and we move on to Sebastian Vettel. Now, it is another mistake from the four-time world champion, and with his teammate winning the race and showing that the pace they had in the car, this should have been a podium opportunity for Vettel, and at the very minimum should have finished 4th position. But while chasing down Valtteri Bottas, he spun out, and then that unsafe entry back onto the track, colliding with Lance Stroll, damaging his front wing, getting a 10-second stop and go penalty, the worst penalty that you can get because of how dangerous it was what he did, causing that collision. Really unexpected from the experienced driver. Terrible, another unforced error he made. For me, I'm going to go really harsh here. It was a terrible day where he should have performed. No points on the board. It's a 1 out of 10 for me for Sebastian Vettel. Moving on to 14th, and that is the Williams of George Russell, which was a very solid drive again, considering the fact that he started in 14th due to penalties, but he was able to maintain that race position. And Spa and Monza have been terrible tracks for the Williams to maintain their pace on. Obviously you had issues with Raikkonen and Grosjean, but again finishing above of his teammate Robert Kubica. A very solid race for him. I wanted to go a little bit higher, but I'm going to give 7 out of 10 because that Williams car is so poor and it's so difficult to really compare it to the rest of the midfield. But again, it was a very solid drive. Started 14th, finished 14th. Well done, George Russell. He again continues to get the most out of that Williams car that he can. So, moving on to 15th, and Kimi Raikkonen, after that crash in Q3 that forced him to then get a gearbox change where he took a 5 grid place penalty, but then also decided to take a penalty for the power unit going there, so he then started from the pit lane, moved up to 15th, and had a bit of a nothing race really. It was, yeah, just a poor weekend all round. Nothing really happened for Raikkonen, didn't really make any positions. For me, it is a 5 out of 10. Raikkonen obviously has very high standards for himself, and we have high standards because of how well he's been performing in that Alpha car. You saw the pace there with obviously how Giovinazzi did getting that points finish. So for me, it is just a 5 out of 10. It's neither there or here really, it's just in the middle. It was a bit of a nothing drive from Kimi today. And then that moves us on to 16th position, guys, and that was Romain Grosjean. Romain Grosjean, Haas, terrible weekend again. They just did not cope, and tyres, I think, again, you didn't really see what happened to Grosjean. I only really noticed what happened in the race. Again, there wasn't really, because there was so much action going on at the top of the field, there wasn't really much camera work going on at the back end of the film. So Grosjean was a bit of a ghost in the race, but finishing only ahead of Robert Kubica's Williams. It's not a great, suggests that there were issues with tyre management again for them. So yeah, it's a 4 out of 10 for Romain Grosjean for me. Moving on to the last classified finisher, and that is Robert Kubica. And again, comfortably beaten by his teammate George Russell. They're in the same car, you have to compare him. The only real barometer to judge Williams by is their teammates, and he's again been comfortably beaten by George Russell. I think he was the only car to be lapped twice. So yeah guys, it is I think probably a 3 out of 10 for Robert Kubica. He is just so far afield, and he may be great in the development and pushing car and behind the scenes, but in that car he is struggling to get the best out of those Pirelli tyres and the best out of the car compared to what George Russell is. And yeah, he is so comfortably behind George Russell at the moment. Now we move on, guys, to our retirees from the race, and we're going to go start off with Kevin Magnussen. I I can't remember where he was, but I'm pretty sure he was outside the points when he retired. It wasn't a great weekend for Haas, but it's a fault that wasn't his own, so I can't be too critical of Kevin Magnussen. There was, I think, some hard racing within there. I'm going to go 5 out of 10 for Kevin Magnussen. A bit like Kimi Raikkonen, neither here nor there, and his retirement wasn't his fault, and I think he certainly was performing better than Romain Grosjean this weekend. So the next retiree was Daniel Kvyat. Well, technically we were going in reverse order. So the middle retiree was Daniel Kvyat, and he again was looking on for a really strong performance. I believe he was running in 7th when he had to retire with an engine problem. He'd just gone in the pits, had just put on a fresh set of tyres, strategy was going great, and yeah, that power unit failed on him, engine problem, went up in smoke. I'm going to give Daniel Kvyat a 7 out of 10 because up until that point, and through no fault of his own retiring, he was driving a very good race. So yeah, Daniel Kvyat a 7 out of 10. And then moving on to our last driver, guys, and that is Carlos Sainz. And again, a second week in a row, a retirement that wasn't his fault, was challenging, probably would have challenged Hulkenberg. We know that McLaren's got pace in it, and Carlos Sainz has been so consistent when in that position further up in the field. We don't know what would have happened. He was driving a very good race, and then obviously he pitted, and as he came out the pits, his I think it was his front left tyre wasn't put on properly, or it might have been his front right, wasn't put on properly, had to retire because it was unsafe. So yeah, his race was over through that. Again, a 7 out of 10. You can't go higher than that, but he was having a good race up until then. So again, like Kvyat, no fault of his own, 7 out of 10 for Carlos Sainz. So guys, that is all the driver ratings, and for me the race, I was veering towards an 8 out of 10 because of having such fantastic action between Leclerc and Hamilton on track. Hungary was all about Max versus Lewis. Monza was all about Leclerc versus Lewis, and I thought it was a really superb, hard battle on the track, and this one was won by Charles Leclerc. But other than that, there wasn't really much that happened across the midfield. Certainly wasn't anything that was really covered from there. So for me, it was a good race, but it wasn't anything higher than that. So I'm going to go for a solid 7 out of 10 for Monza. And that, guys, rounds up the driver ratings video for you. So if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Let us know that you like the video. Comment below, do you agree with my ratings? Or what would your ratings be for the drivers if you disagree with me? Like I said, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. Click that bell notification. You can keep up to date with all our latest content that comes out for us. And you F1 fans, keep racing. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed the video today. So there you go, that is our driver ratings. If you are new around here, don't forget you can subscribe by clicking here. Maybe check out our live race reaction that I streamed yesterday up here. And maybe if you are still trying to figure out what the hell happened in the qualifying on Saturday, actually took an in-depth look here. Guys, thanks for watching.